Some insults fade with time. Others stay with you forever. Not because they were loud, but because they came from someone you loved like family. I never imagined that the woman my son married would one day look me in the eyes and call me a failure. What hurt even more, she did it in front of her own mother. She thought everyone would laugh. Instead, her mother stood up, looked straight at her daughter, and said something that changed our family forever. My name is Henry Carter. I'm 68 years old, and I spent 43 years teaching history at a public high school in Ohio. People often ask if teaching made me rich. It didn't, but it gave me something money never could. Respect. Thousands of students walked into my classroom as nervous teenagers. Many left believing they could become something greater than they had imagined. Watching them succeed was enough for me. My late wife, Linda, used to joke that I cared more about my students than about fixing things around the house. She wasn't entirely wrong. Linda passed away 7 years ago after a long battle with cancer. Losing her felt like losing half of myself. For months, I wandered through a quiet house, wondering why every room suddenly felt too big. If it hadn't been for my son, Ethan, I don't know how I would have survived. He visited every weekend. Sometimes we'd fish together. Sometimes we'd simply sit on the back porch drinking coffee. Neither of us spoke much. We didn't have to. Then Ethan met Olivia. She was intelligent, confident, beautiful. She worked in corporate marketing and always seemed to know exactly what to say. From the very beginning, I welcomed her. I wanted her to feel like she already belonged to the family. When they became engaged, I quietly used nearly half of my retirement savings to help pay for the wedding. I never told anyone how much it cost me. Parents don't help their children expecting applause. They do it because that's what parents do. After the wedding, I also helped them buy their first home. When Ethan worried about the down payment, I handed him a cashier's check. His eyes filled with tears. "Dad, I can't accept this." "You can. It's not a loan. It's an investment." "In what? In your future." He hugged me so tightly that day I could barely breathe. I'll never forget this. I believed him. For the first year of their marriage, everything felt normal. Olivia called me every few days. She'd ask for recipes Linda used to make. She'd invite me over for dinner. She even insisted I spend Thanksgiving with them. Then, things slowly changed. It wasn't one dramatic moment. It was dozens of tiny moments. She started correcting the way I dressed. "Henry, that jacket is 20 years old." She'd laugh. "You deserve something modern." I would smile. "This one still keeps me warm." She'd roll her eyes. Another time she visited my house and noticed my old pickup truck parked outside. "You still drive that? It's reliable. It looks like it belongs in a museum." She laughed. I laughed too. But Ethan didn't. He looked uncomfortable. As months passed, Olivia became increasingly interested in appearances. Luxury furniture, designer handbags, expensive vacations. She often talked about image. People judge success by what they see. I always answered the same way. The people worth impressing don't. She'd smile politely, but I could tell she disagreed. One Friday afternoon, Ethan called. "Dad, what are you doing Sunday?" "Nothing planned. We're having lunch. Olivia's mother is visiting. I'd really like you to come. I wouldn't miss it." I had met Olivia's mother only once before. Her name was Margaret. She had been a nurse for over 30 years before retiring. She seemed kind, practical, the sort of person who cared more about character than money. Sunday arrived. Their dining room looked beautiful. Fresh flowers covered the table. Everything smelled wonderful. Margaret welcomed me warmly. "It's so nice seeing you again, Henry." "You too." Lunch began pleasantly. We spoke about retirement, travel, books. Margaret mentioned that she was thinking about volunteering at a children's hospital. I smiled. The world always needs kind people. Olivia glanced at me with a small grin. "Henry loves volunteering." Margaret smiled. "That's admirable." Olivia shrugged. "I suppose." The conversation continued. Margaret admired the dining room. "This house is beautiful." Olivia beamed proudly. "We've worked so hard for everything." I quietly nodded. They had worked hard. But I also remembered the afternoon I handed Ethan that check for the down payment. I never expected anyone to mention it. Recognition wasn't important. Honesty was. A few minutes later, Margaret looked toward me. "So, Henry, are you enjoying retirement?" "I am. I finally have time to read all the books I postponed for years." Before I could continue, Olivia laughed. Oh, Henry's version of retirement is clipping grocery coupons and repairing things that should have been thrown away years ago. Everyone chuckled politely, including me. Then she added another sentence. The one that silenced the room. Honestly, if I ever lived like that, I'd feel like a complete failure. She looked directly at me. I'm sorry, Henry, but you've spent your whole life working, and this is all you have to show for it. The smile disappeared from Ethan's face. I slowly placed my fork on the table. The room became painfully quiet. Margaret stared at her daughter in complete disbelief. Olivia, however, had no idea what was about to happen. No one moved. No one spoke. The only sound in the room was the faint clink of a spoon against a coffee cup. Margaret slowly placed her napkin on the table. She looked at Olivia, not with anger, with disappointment. Would you repeat what you just said? Olivia gave an awkward laugh. Oh, Mom, it was only a joke. Margaret didn't smile. No, it wasn't. I asked you to repeat it. The room grew even quieter. Olivia shifted uncomfortably in her chair. I just said, if I lived like Henry, I'd feel like a failure. Margaret nodded slowly. So you truly believe that? Olivia crossed her arms. I mean, look around. She gestured toward the large dining room. Ethan and I have built a successful life. We work hard. We've earned everything we own. I quietly lowered my eyes. I had no interest in defending myself. Some arguments aren't worth winning. But Margaret wasn't finished. She turned toward Ethan. May I ask you something? Of course. When you bought this house, who helped with the down payment? Ethan swallowed. My father. And when you graduated from college without student loans, my father helped. And your wedding, he paid for nearly half of it. Margaret nodded. Then she looked back at Olivia. So the man you just called a failure made this life possible. Olivia's confident expression began to fade. Mom, you don't understand. No, Margaret interrupted gently. I understand perfectly. She leaned back in her chair. When your father died, we barely had enough money to keep the lights on. Olivia looked away. You remember those days? We couldn't afford vacations. We bought second-hand furniture. I repaired clothes instead of replacing them. Her voice softened. But never, not once, did I think we were failures. She pointed toward me. Do you know what I see when I look at Henry? Olivia remained silent. I see a man who spent his entire life putting other people before himself. A man who buried his wife and still found the strength to keep helping others. A father who sacrificed his retirement so his son could start a better life. Margaret paused. And somehow, you looked at that man and saw failure. Olivia's eyes slowly filled with tears. I didn't mean it like that. Then how did you mean it? She had no answer. For the first time since lunch had begun, she looked uncertain. Ethan finally spoke. Dad, I'm sorry. I looked at him. I should have stopped this a long time ago. What do you mean? I've heard comments like this before. They started small. I kept telling myself they weren't a big deal. I thought staying quiet would keep the peace. He lowered his head. But all I really did was allow someone I loved to be disrespected. I smiled sadly. Silence often hurts more than words. His eyes became watery. I'm sorry, I nodded. I know. Margaret reached across the table and gently took my hand. Henry, I owe you an apology too. You've done nothing wrong. I raised the woman who spoke to you that way. I shook my head immediately. No, children eventually make their own choices. You aren't responsible for every one of them. She smiled sadly. Thank you. Olivia suddenly pushed her chair back. I can't do this. She stood up. I'm tired of everyone acting like I'm some horrible person. Margaret looked at her calmly. No one is saying you're horrible. We're saying you're wrong. There's a difference. Olivia's breathing became heavier. You've always judged me. I've spent years trying to build a successful life. Margaret nodded. I know, but somewhere along the way, you started believing success could only be measured by money. The room fell silent again. Then Margaret asked one simple question. Olivia, if everything you own disappeared tomorrow, who would you be? Olivia froze. No answer came. Margaret continued. Your job could disappear. This house could disappear. Your savings could disappear. If all that happened, would there still be someone worth respecting? A tear rolled down Olivia's cheek. She quietly sat back down. I don't know. Margaret reached into her purse. She carefully removed an old photograph. The edges were worn. The colors had faded. She handed it to Olivia. What do you see? Olivia looked down. It's you and Dad. We're standing outside our first apartment. Margaret smiled. Look closer. Olivia frowned. The apartment looks tiny. It was. We had almost nothing. But your father smiled every single day. She gently touched the photo. He used to tell me, money makes life easier. Character makes life meaningful. Margaret looked directly into Olivia's eyes. You've spent years chasing the easier life, but you've forgotten the meaningful one. Olivia finally broke down. She covered her face with both hands. I don't know what's happened to me. No one answered. Sometimes, the most powerful moments happen in complete silence. After several minutes, Olivia slowly stood. She walked around the table, stopped directly in front of me. Tears streamed down her face. I'm ashamed. I've been comparing our lives to everyone else's. Social media, my co-workers, our neighbors. I always felt like we had to look successful. She looked at me. And I made you feel small just so I could feel bigger. Her voice cracked. I'm so sorry, Henry. I looked into her eyes. For the first time, I didn't see arrogance. I saw regret. Real regret. I took a slow breath, then quietly said, an apology is the beginning. It's not the ending. She nodded. I know, I'll spend however long it takes proving I've changed. Just then, Margaret smiled for the first time that afternoon. She looked at her daughter and softly said, good, because actions, words, are what rebuild broken families. And none of us realized that before the week was over, Olivia would have the chance to prove those words were true. Margaret's words stayed with all of us long after that uncomfortable Sunday lunch ended. Actions, not words, are what rebuild broken families. No one argued, because everyone at that table knew she was right. 3 days passed. I didn't hear from Olivia. I wasn't surprised. Real change takes time. An apology spoken through tears is easy. Living differently is much harder. On Wednesday afternoon, I was trimming the hedges in my front yard when a car pulled into my driveway. It was Ethan. Olivia sat quietly in the passenger seat. She looked nervous. They walked toward me together. Dad, Ethan began. Can we come in? I nodded. Of course. Once inside, Olivia looked around my modest little house. For the first time, she wasn't looking at what the house lacked. She was looking at what it held. Family photographs. Linda's old rocking chair. The bookshelf I'd built with my own hands. The worn dining table where my family had shared thousands of meals. She smiled sadly. I never noticed how peaceful this feels. I quietly poured 3 cups of coffee. After several moments of silence, Olivia finally spoke. I've been thinking about what happened every minute since Sunday. She looked directly at me. I've spent years believing expensive things made people successful. I was wrong. She reached into her purse and handed me an envelope. What is this? Open it. Inside was the cashier's check Ethan and I had used years ago for their house. Not the original. Made out to me, for the exact amount I'd given them. I immediately shook my head. No. Olivia looked confused. You won't take it? Didn't help my son expecting repayment. But, no. I gently pushed the envelope back toward her. If I accept this, it turns love into a transaction. She slowly lowered the envelope. Tears filled her eyes again. I don't know how to make this right. You can't erase what happened, she nodded. I know, but you can decide who you'll become from this day forward. The following Saturday, Olivia called. Henry, would you spend the afternoon with me? I hesitated. What for? I want to show you something. Curious, I agreed. She drove me across town. We stopped in front of a small community center. Children were playing basketball outside. Inside, dozens of volunteers were organizing food boxes for elderly families. Olivia smiled. I started volunteering here this week. I looked at her. Why? Because I realized something. She laughed softly through tears. I've spent years buying things I didn't need, while people 10 minutes away were struggling to buy groceries. For the next 4 hours, we packed food, carried boxes, talked with elderly couples. One gentleman recognized me. Mr. Carter. I smiled. Yes, you taught history at Lincoln High. I did. He shook my hand enthusiastically. I graduated 28 years ago. I became a firefighter because of one conversation we had after class. You told me that serving people would always matter more than impressing people. I barely remembered saying those words. He did. Olivia watched the entire conversation in silence. After the man left, she whispered, That's your legacy. Not a bigger house, not a luxury car. People. For the first time, I saw genuine admiration in her eyes. Not pity, not guilt, respect. Several months passed. Sunday lunches returned. Only this time, something had changed. Olivia no longer cared about showing off expensive furniture. Instead, she asked about family recipes. She listened when people spoke. She laughed more, compared less. One afternoon, she surprised me by arriving at my house with gardening gloves. "I thought your roses could use some help," I laughed. "They certainly can." We spent the afternoon planting flowers Linda used to love. As the sun began setting, Olivia quietly said, "I wish she'd had the chance to know me like this." I smiled. "I think she'd be proud of the woman you're becoming." She wiped away a tear. "I hope so." Almost a year after that painful lunch, Ethan and Olivia invited the entire family to celebrate their 5th wedding anniversary. Friends, neighbors, relatives, even Margaret was there. Halfway through dinner, Olivia stood up and gently tapped her glass. "I'd like to say something." The room fell silent. She looked directly at me. "A year ago, I believed success meant having the nicest house, the newest car, the most expensive clothes." She smiled sadly. "Then I called the kindest man I've ever known a failure." "No one moved," she continued. "I've regretted those words every single day." She walked over to me carrying a small wrapped package. "I know you'll probably say it isn't necessary, but this isn't about money." I opened it. Inside was a beautifully restored photograph of Linda and me from our 25th wedding anniversary. The frame was handcrafted from oak. Across the bottom was a small brass plaque. It read, "A successful life isn't measured by what you keep, but by what you give." My eyes filled with tears. The room remained completely silent. Olivia knelt beside my chair. "I'm proud to call you my father-in-law, and I hope one day you'll be proud to call me your daughter." I stood slowly, then hugged her. Not because she'd earned forgiveness with gifts, because she'd earned it with change, real change. The room erupted into applause. Margaret quietly smiled through tears. She looked at me and whispered, "I told you she still had a good heart." I smiled. "You were right. People often think the strongest families are the ones that never argue. They're not. The strongest families are the ones willing to admit when they're wrong, ask for forgiveness, and become better than they were yesterday." My daughter-in-law once looked me in the eyes and called me a failure. A year later, she taught everyone in our family what true success really looks like. And in the end, the greatest gift she ever gave me wasn't an apology. It was becoming the kind of person my late wife would have been proud to welcome into our family. The end.